Hi everyone. I hope you can all see me okay. Thanks so much for joining us today for our very first head-to-head webinar battle. Um, so for those of you who don't know a lot about Headforwards, just to let you know that we are an outsourced software development company of about 100 people. And we're based in Cornwall in the beautiful Fibre Hub, which was just opened last year. However, Headforwards actually celebrated 11 years this year as a company. So all of our employees are either hybrid or remote, and our clients cover a real large range of different industries and sectors. My name's Lindsay. I'm part of our people team, and we're just really pleased to be launching this new webinar series today. So just a couple of little housekeeping bits for everyone. We are recording this for those who couldn't make it live. So we'll be popping it online for other people to have a watch. So I hope that's okay with everybody that's here. Throughout the webinar today, you can access the reactions at the top, and also you can ask questions. So you do this by clicking, if you can see at the top right of your screen, you've got a little Q&A tab. If you click on that, you can just type in a question that you want to ask our debaters today, and we'll see that. And we might not get to every question, but we're certainly going to do our best at the end to get through as many as we can. So if you do want to ask a question, just pop it in that Q&A tab, and we'll hopefully be able to answer those for you today. The other thing we're doing is we're launching a poll. We're going to launch this a little bit later so that you can all pick your winner, whether it is Greg or Andy. So that poll, when we release it, it's going to pop up on your screen. If you don't feel quite ready to make your decision at that point, you can just click the little cross in the top right-hand side of it. And then you can access it whenever you want by clicking on that polls tab. It will come up in the side and you can cast your vote. And of course, we will be releasing the results at the end of the webinar today. So I hope that's all clear. You've got your Q&A tab, poll tab. You can do all your reactions throughout. And yeah, hopefully, we'll see who wins today. So I'm going to hand over to Tom. He is going to be our facilitator for the debate. So thank you very much, everyone, and enjoy.
Well, hello and welcome to the inaugural Headforwards head-to-head debate. My name is Tom Goldring. I'm an internal product owner here at Headforwards, and I'm delighted to be chairing today's webinar. Today's topic is Angular versus React, and our two framework fanatics are going to be going head-to-head to thrash out which is best. In the React corner, the special projects Dom, sporting the snappiest suit you'll see this side of Senham, we have Greg West, who I believe is going to introduce himself quickly.
Yeah, hello, that's me. Yeah, I'm Greg West. I'm a full stack developer here at Headforwards. Been here about 5 years, taking on a variety of projects. And like my bio says, in my free time, I have a gaming PC and I like jaunts to the local pub.
Sounds like a good time. And his opponent, whose health tech experience means he can take you apart and put you back together again, probably. It's Mr. Andy Weir.
Hi, I'm Andy. I'm a software engineer, full stack software engineer. I like to call myself, but yeah, I write software. I've been at it with Headforwards for about 10 years. And a trivia fact, I once had a job fixing tanks in a past life.
Also sounds pretty exciting. So today we are going to be following the ABBA or ABBA debating format. This means that our challenger A, Mr. Greg West, will have 5 minutes to lay out the case for React. For challenger B, Mr. Andy Weir is given 4 minutes to provide his rebuttals to those arguments. We will then switch and Andy will have 5 minutes to make the case for React before giving Greg a 4-minute window to provide his rebuttal to Andy's arguments. At that point, we will then open the polls, allowing you, our esteemed audience, to cast your votes for today's winner. And if that's not enough, while the votes are being counted, our two webinar warriors here will also take part in a post-debate quick-fire Q&A round, taking 4 questions, with each challenger having just 60 seconds to make their case. As Lindsay mentioned, if you have a question you'd like to see our debaters take on, then please feel free to submit that via the Q&A tab here on the Teams chat. And while you're there, please also feel free to suggest any future debate topics that you'd like to see us cover as well. And you could be the brain behind our next big battle. So without any further ado, we will come to our first constructive argument, the case for React. Greg, you have 5 minutes and your time begins now.
Okay, cool. So first of all, I don't have a Teams background. This is really the room I'm in. I don't have a presentation either. I'm just going to rant at you for 5 minutes. So my experience with React is over the past 5 years, worked on several large projects. We've worked on things including Next.js. We've used Redux. We've used OIDC integrations, plugged in Algolia, all sorts of things like that. I've also worked with Angular. Again, over the past 3 years or so, interacted with several large projects, been quite heavily involved in them, both AngularJS, Angular 2. So I have experience using both frameworks, which is why I volunteered to try and sway you to use one over the other, that being React. So a bit of history. When I was first starting out here, we had a question over which SPA front-end framework we wanted to use. Would it be Angular or would it be React? And we all gathered around. There's about 10 of us in the team. We had chat through. We chatted through, and we thought probably better off using Angular. But we all went home that night, and we all came back in, and we pretty much all decided, no, let's have a crack at React. And I'm going to outline why I think that was. So if you look at React versus Angular, look on most sites, you'll find a whole host of things that people say about it. So it's got better community support because it's higher starred on GitHub. It's got a better reputation in general, quite subjective, I suppose. It's newer, it's true. It came out about 3 years after Angular, I think. So it's got the jump on it there. It's in use on more websites. If you look up the stats, considerably more, I think, nowadays, and it's accelerating away. It's got a whole host of production web technologies that are in it that are probably the same or better as Angular. Things like server-side rendering, integrates with hosted stacks like Netlify, Vercel, Next.js, stuff like that. It's got better tooling, or the same comparable tooling, so browser plugins, IDE plugins, Babel modules, that sorts of stuff. And it's got great third-party support as well. So most services you go for will offer you a React plugin if they offer plugin at all. So that's all kind of technical stuff, and you can look that up. But why did we pick React? I think one of the biggest things to say about it is it's less opinionated. Everything in Angular seems to be dictated for you, I find. There's an Angular way of doing it, and you have to do that. Whereas React, it's not. React is the core framework. It does what it does well, and it's got plenty of opportunity to plug in other stuff in. Things like state management, network access layers, anything you want, test frameworks, you can choose. And like most things in life, if you're forced to do something the same way, you're never going to get better. Whereas React lets you, that's what Angular does. React lets you do it however you want. And in that way, it gets better. Things like the state management, people used to use Redux. I don't know if you've ever used React and Redux, but it's quite verbose. But that forced or encouraged React to up their game and introduce the context provider, which made it better. And I think that's a lot better than it is in Angular. And in that way, it changes and improves itself. It's also got great backwards compatibility. Another bugbear of mine with Angular, whenever you Google Angular, you get AngularJS, and you don't know you're looking at it for about half an hour if you're looking on Stack Overflow. You look at the wrong version of Angular. I know they're supposed to be different things, but Google doesn't know that. So React has got stunning backwards compatibility support. There might be different ways of doing things that come in over the years, but things like the functional components versus class components, they all still work. And that formed part of the reason we went for it. In the meantime, I've developed a few what you might call opinions about React versus Angular as well, which I'll care to share with you. One is it doesn't force you to use TypeScript. Angular does force you to use TypeScript. If you like TypeScript, that's fine. If you don't like TypeScript because you believe that it's unnecessary in the face of modern software development and test-driven development, Angular doesn't give you the option, but React does. I like that. I like that freedom. It's not got an overly complicated inversion of control infrastructure. React uses ES6 modules. It's quite nice. It's quite simple to use that. Angular has a crazy IOC infrastructure that makes you register everything inside it and then injects it into constructors, which seems overly complicated in my opinion. But the best thing I liked about Angular, about React rather, is JSX, the JSX syntax. If you've used it, you'll know this is its own almost sub-language that lets you write what looks like DOM syntax inside your JavaScript. That means you can have your component as a single file. Angular doesn't let you do this. It forces you to use MVC, model view controller architecture, which I remember coming in about 15 years or so ago. I'm that old, and I never liked it because it splits up the view and the display logic. It's true, your view and display logic should be split up, but I don't think it should be imposed on you by the architecture of the language you could be using. I never liked it, and when React came out and said we're not using that, I was like, great. So that's kind of what I've discerned. That's why I, having worked with them both, no, I dislike Angular amazingly. I work with it and it's viable. I just prefer React. One of the main reasons that I think I've got it, it's easier to learn. It's got a shorter learning curve. It's got simpler concepts. It does what it does well, and only what it does well, unlike Angular, which tries to do everything. But the biggest thing, which comes back to why we all chose overnight to use Angular instead of React and why we all liked it once we started using it, it's just more fun. I know it's entirely subjective, but I actually enjoy writing React, which is something I don't get from Angular. React sparks joy. Angular does not spark joy. This one is good, but I prefer this. It's just my take on it. How am I doing for time?
I've appeared to hover over your shoulder, Greg, because we are a couple of minutes over.
Oh.
But your passion and joy was so clear, I couldn't bring myself to interrupt.
Oh, okay. Well, thanks for listening.
Thank you very much, Greg. A compelling argument. Andy, we will now hand over to you. You have 4 minutes to provide your rebuttals to Greg's argument, and your time begins now.
Yeah, so the 4 things I picked out is kind of opinionated in the learning curve, rolling updates, TypeScript, and JSX. So if I start with opinionated, that can go both ways. Not having to decide every tiny little detail to develop something is a good thing if you want to just get on and develop the thing. I had a look last night for how to do styling in React, and the first page I came to had 8 different ways to do styling. And then I had a look for how to do forms in React, and there's 9 different ways to do forms in React. So that's like 8 times 9. It's like nearly 90 different ways to do just combinations to do those 2 different things. So then when you kind of come on to learning curve, yes, Angular has a steeper learning curve because it does more, so you need to know more. But if you go from one project to another React project, because everything is so fluid, you can almost be going to a totally different React. So the last React you worked on isn't the same as this new React. So there's a learning curve there in terms of the actual project itself, and that kind of works when you get new React developers come into your project as well. And then they kind of look at your code and go, "That's not my React. That's a different React." So that's, I think, to kind of trade off those 2. Opinionated can be good if you just want to get on and do stuff and not have to make every decision. Learning curve, there's a learning curve as well with React if you move around from project to project. Next one, backwards compatibility. Again, I think that's a double-edged double-edged sword. So having something that's backwards compatible for ages is great if you've got something really, really old. But it also kind of sends you down a route with going, oh, well, we don't need to update anything or change anything because it's always going to be up to date. And one example, love it or hate it, WordPress is really popular, and WordPress is also really backwards compatible. And in my opinion, WordPress is a terrible, terrible piece of software, and the number of security holes in it is evidence of that. So that kind of backwards compatibility can take you down another route as well. Angular's chosen to go down a different route, saying we're going to have versions like Node has versions, LTS, long-term support versions, and we're going to kind of move the framework forwards. So one of the other comments was that because you can do what you want with React, it moves forwards. Well, Angular's chosen another way to move forwards. We're going to move it forwards. So that's another contrasting view on that. Next one, TypeScript. I love TypeScript. I used to hate it. I used to find it really frustrating, the fact that every tiny little thing you do, do I really have to make a type for that now? Yes, you do. But it saved me so many times from doing stupid things. I kind of really love the fact that we got TypeScript. You can use TypeScript in React, but it's a bit of an afterthought. So lots of the types are really clumsy to use, whereas with Angular, TypeScript is a first-class citizen, so it's much more pleasurable to use TypeScript with that. JSX, yeah, great. Everything's a HTML tag or looks a bit like a HTML tag. I think the danger with that is you can end up going, and you're not guaranteed to go down, but you can end up going down a very procedural route in the way you write code. Things you normally wouldn't think of using a HTML tag to express. You express that in React, so it's a function, it's a JavaScript function, but we're kind of using a HTML tag. And you can't kind of separate things out then. It's like you do your routing with a HTML tag. You do all sorts of functions with HTML tags. Again, so it's a double-edged sword, and I kind of feel that hiding JavaScript functions inside or disguising them as HTML tags can take you down a procedural route. And I'm guessing that as Tom's beautiful face has just appeared, that my time is up.
You are absolutely correct, Mr. Weir, but thank you very much for the rebuttal there, and we will be coming almost straight back to you. So we there have the first half of our debate. That was Greg's case for React and Andy's rebuttal to those arguments. So we will now move straight on to our second constructive argument, the case for Angular. So Andy will be coming straight back to you, and you have another 5 minutes on the clock. Your time begins now.
Okay, so I haven't got a presentation either. I just gathered together a bunch of tabs in my web browser, which is the closest I get to a presentation. I'm going to kind of start. I don't want to compare each feature, but when you kind of look at the Angular page of their features and benefits, there's quite a lot there. It does quite a lot. I think that's one of the big differences. If you contrast that with React, it's got kind of 3.5. Maybe 4 if you dig in there, things that it kind of really sells as selling points. So the difference is React's more of a UI framework. So it's concerned about presenting things on the page. There's a little bit more around that. And anything outside that, you're kind of on your own. Whereas Angular is a full framework. Yes, there's an Angular way to do things, but if you do it the Angular way and you go along with that, then you can do quite a lot. You have to make very few decisions on how to do things. So I kind of wanted to touch on a few of what I think are Angular's kind of big, powerful features. So the first one is routing. You can do routing in React. You can do routing in Angular. At first glance, they look fairly similar. We're using JavaScript to define our routes here rather than with HTML tags, which is kind of, it's probably not really his semantics there. But kind of stacked up on, then we start getting, we can then got some really nice capabilities with guards, so we can prevent people from accessing routes. Again, you can do that with React, but it's more, it's in JavaScript, so you can see your routes as routes, not routes as HTML tags with properties that define your routes, which is that kind of procedural approach, which I I don't like. So we got the guards. An example of that, maybe you've got some sections on your website, you deal with payments, you deal with users, you deal with bookings. So you could guard against only allowing payment admins to access the payment side. You can only allow user admins to access user paths, and you could only allow the booking admins to access the bookings path. And that kind of sits quite nicely there. And then you can make sure that they all have to pass the logged in guard before you even entertain the fact of looking other places. So that's one of them. And then kind of stacked up on top of that, we've got modules. So there's lots of stuff that says React is scalable. And I think within the context of building UI, it's scalable. You can build reusable components, you can nest those components, you can compose and combine those components to make more big, powerful, complex things. But that's as far as it goes. There's no way to deal with all the logic communicated with backend servers. How do we do that? How do I break apart by business domain or business models or domain models? Whereas Angular comes baked in with a mechanism to do that model. So you can bundle together routes and components and services, which we'll come onto, into a module. So you could have a payments module that deals with all your payments related content. You can have a bookings module that deals with all your bookings related content. You can have a user module that deals with all your user related content. And then once you've done that, rather than having individual components attached to your routes, you can have a whole module attached to your routes. So you do / payments, and that fires up the payments module. And then the routing inside the payments module takes over, and you've got a nicely decoupled architecture where things do things together and kind of within the business domain. So payments just deals with payments. You've not got it kind of a danger at leaking out into other places. And then on top of that, lazy loading. Again, you can do lazy loading with React. There's nothing stopping you doing that, and it's perfectly possible. But with the combination of the routing and the modules, you lazy load the modules. There's an example there. So you can lazy load the module. It won't load into the browser until you need it. So if you never touch payments, you never load in the payments module. So you've got this really powerful ability to scale your code when you've got lots of different business domains or different domain models that you're dealing with. So that's kind of those kind of three together is one of the things I think is really good about Angular. I think Angular its market fit is scale, so big things with lots of pages or dashboards or admin type stuff, and kind of when you get there, when you need something like that, this is the framework to go with. So next, Greg hates dependency injection. I love dependency injection. I first came cross paths with Angular from a guy called Mishko Hevery. He was a technical coach at Google. He did a load of talks on writing clean code, the Google Clean Code talks. So they're quite dated now, but the information is quite valid. And he wanted to kind of take another approach to JavaScript, where JavaScript's got a bad reputation with other developers of being a Wild West, and kind of take these principles that produce clean, maintainable, loosely coupled code and apply those to JavaScript. And the kind of combination of TypeScript plus dependency injection plus services kind of delivers on that. So you've got the same kind of loosely coupled architecture that you can have with kind of back-end code languages, your C# and your C++ and your Javas in the front end, which if you're building something big, you don't want kind of sprawling code where you can't keep control of where the dependencies are, how everything links together, being able to change stuff without changing something over here and something over here explodes because it's all tightly coupled. So that's kind of one of those killer features. So we've got dependency and we've got services, and Angular takes you down a route of event-driven services. That's kind of the way you're encouraged to go, which if you want to build a big architecture, having the ability to be event-driven gives you some really nice capability in terms of being loosely coupled. Again, you don't have a thing that calls a thing that calls a thing that calls a thing. You go, here's an event, this has happened. Anybody that cares about that can listen to that event and act on its basis. So that allows you to kind of move stuff around and how things are connected together. So that's another one of these kind of big features for Angular in terms of scalability. So that was number 2. And then the third one is Angular. Angular has 2 ways to do forms, and one of those ways isn't the right way. So there's only really one way to do forms in Angular, which if you want to carve your own path through the world, that might be frustrating. But if you just want to get on and do some forms and you don't want to choose which of the 8 ways to do forms in React to do, then this is nice. And it comes baked in. So the forms are really powerful. So you can do things like have nested forms. So say your data model is nested, you can have a form that reflects that. So you might have a customer that's got an address. You can have an address form that's a separate piece of code, a separate component with its own validation. So you can validate the address by itself. And then if it is valid, it's going to pass it on to the parent form that it wraps with it. And say you want multiple addresses, again, you can do that with this. You can build arrays of forms, and Angular gives that capability that maybe you've got several addresses for a user, and it kind of reflects the model. So it's much better at aligning your forms with your kind of your data and how that's structured, and doesn't kind of end up forcing you down a path of flattening your data just because it's really awkward to do forms. Validation is lovely in React, and I kind of looked back through the validation in forms in React, and it's all very, apart from Yup, there's one library, Yup, which kind of in the how to do validation in React didn't even barely got a mention. But it's all very manual. You have to kind of manually configure things and manually add things and manually do this and manually do that. And it's kind of the same with a lot of the things in React, because you can do things any way you want. You have to do it. And whereas this, it just kind of works. Reactive forms in Angular just works with the main model, and is really nice to use. So that's 1, 2, 3. It's kind of 3 killer features. So yeah, so just to summarize, I like Angular because it tells you what to do. I don't have to make decisions. Once you get over yourself that you're not special and your opinions aren't that important or groundbreaking, and just kind of get on and do it the Angular way, you can build stuff really fast. You can build big complex apps really fast. You can make big complex apps that are loosely coupled, that are easier to change. Not to say you can't do that React, but it gives you some guardrails that kind of guide you down a way that will end up, if you kind of go with it, with scalable apps. So that's me.
Thank you very much, Andy. That's grand. We had a little bit of overrun there, but we had a few minutes on the React side, so it seems fair to even it up. I see Greg has appeared, ready to come out swinging. So I will hand straight back over to Greg. Greg, you have 4 minutes to respond to Andy's arguments. Your time begins now.
Okay. I'll just go over a few things I noted. You say Angular does more than React. It's true, but what React does is very good, better, in fact, I'd say. Outside that, you're on your own. I know you said you're not on your own. It's got a great community behind it. There's a whole load of plugins. Angular routing, Angular modules, Angular forms. Yeah, you've got a way of doing it, and they're all pretty terrible. And you can't change them. Like I said, React can do things that are simple, and it can do things that are very complex. I noted that most of the examples you listed, you prefixed by saying you can do this in React as well, and you can. You can plug in something that's much simpler that doesn't have those features, or you can make it more complex. In Angular, you only have the complex solution. It's a sledgehammer to crack a nut. It's old and it's creaking, and it shows. On point, I did note I don't like dependency injection. I love dependency injection. I just realized that ES6 modules are a much better dependency injector than the thing that Angular has, which is ironic because Angular makes you use ES6 as well as that. It's crazy, in my opinion. But yeah, I think your final point about getting over your opinion and just falling in line sort of says it all. I think that's a very corporate, old-fashioned way of thinking. We do agile. We like to empower people. It's the whole theory X over theory Y thing, writ in technology form. Angular it's a monolith and you have to bend to its will, whereas React is an enabler and it lets you do what you want. That's why I like it. And that's why I'm asking for your vote today. That's all I've got to say.
That is awesome. Thank you very much, Greg, for a solid rebuttal there. And there we have it. That's 2 compelling cases and 2 righteous rebuttals. We had a little bit of overrun on both sides there, but as you can appreciate, I'm sure that is a lot of ground to cover in a very short amount of time. I'm sure anyone who has done this before will tell you that those 5 minutes will absolutely flash by far, far faster than you would expect. So it's now down to you, our esteemed audience, to pick the winner from our 2 challengers. Lindsay, can we open the voting now? I'm not sure if that is already open, the poll, or here we go. So the poll should now be appearing on your screens. You are very welcome to cast your vote now, or if you want, you are welcome to click the cross and drop out of there for a few minutes while you mull your opinion, and you'll be able to complete the poll via the polls tab here in the Teams chat. What else do we have to cover now? So yeah, if you cast your vote now, we will summarize those by the end of the debate and let you know who the winner is. But while those votes are being cast and counted, we'll move on to our quickfire Q&A round with the first of 4 questions. We will alternate who answers the questions first, but Greg will take the lead for our first question. And each of our challengers will have 60 seconds to give us their opinion on the subject at hand. Greg, the first question that we have for you is, what would you say is the worst feature of the library that you are advocating for?
Worst feature of React, classic interview question. It's too damn good. No, obviously you can't say that. I think Andy's pretty much nailed actually what the secret flaw in React is. It gives you too much freedom. Yes, it is good to choose, but sometimes you may end up choosing endless things, trying endless things, looking for new things, and not finding the best one. And he's probably right there. It's there can be too much choice.
Very fair. So we will now switch over to Andy. Andy, could you please tell us the worst feature of the library that you are advocating for?
I think it's probably the reverse of Greg's answer. So it is opinionated and there is a learning curve. So it can be frustrating sometimes to go, why can I not just do it this way, and having to kind of search up, Google search, how do I do X in Angular? I think that it's frustrating, but it's the same as frustrating as, do I have to do a type in TypeScript? Yes, you do. It's going to save you. Do you have to do it the Angular way? Yes, you do, and it'll be easier in the long run.
Very nice, very nice. So we will now move on to our second question. Andy, you'll be in the hot seat for the first one again this time. The second question that we have from our audience today is, how do you plan in advance for the future scalability of applications?
So as Angular comes with lovely modules to componentize your code, and you don't have to think about it, and that's one of the kind of big things in terms of scalability. There's the event driven and modules that you can break stuff up, and there's a path to do that. It doesn't stop you doing it in React. You can break stuff into modules, but you can go from Angular project to Angular project, and there's a defined way. This is how we break stuff into modules. So I think those are the 2 that gives you the scalability and changeability with the decoupling.
Very nice. Thank you very much. Greg, we will throw over to yourself now for your answer to this question. How do you plan in advance for the future scalability of applications?
I guess the simple question is don't, because we do Agile, we just do these things as they come up. But when you get around to scaling your app, there's a whole host of stuff you can do. Yeah, like creating modules, breaking out new projects. React's pretty simple. You can plug it in. It's true you're going to have to use something else if you wanted to plan in advance. If you were using something like NX or one of those other module management systems, they kind of come with that out of the box. If you knew you wanted scalability to begin with, which I guess many projects do, NX would be a good one to look at, but there are others.
Thank you very much. We will then move on to our third question here. And Greg, again, this is coming straight back to you in our alternating structure here. The third question is the pervasiveness of modern JavaScript a good or a bad thing?
Modern JavaScript, I mean, there's a whole host of different kinds of JavaScript out there, I guess. I assume it means like the kind of Webpack compiled SPA applications. You get JavaScript on the back end, of course, in Node. So yeah, it's all over. Is it a good thing? Don't know. It's just a computer programming language. They're all quite similar. I kind of quite like JavaScript. It's got great features, like closures, functional, as long as you don't try and do something silly like impose types onto it. I know some people find that pleasurable, but I don't. So I don't think it's a bad thing or a good thing. It's like yeah, depends on your point of view, I guess.
It just is. Thank you very much, Greg. That's brilliant. And now, Andy, we will hand over to yourself for the same question. Is the pervasiveness of modern JavaScript a good thing or a bad thing?
Well, I kind of thought that the question was initially to kind of looking at full stack JavaScript stacks, front end, back end, but maybe it's just the only real choice is on the front end. I think JavaScript has grown up. I think it's kind of a double-edged sword having a monopoly. So JavaScript's got a monopoly on responsivity, reactive front ends, and I don't think it seems to be damaging things at the moment. It seems to be moving forwards, and it's open source, and people are tinkering with things. There's other technologies coming on the horizon, so I don't think it's damaging or constraining at the moment.
Thank you very much. And now on to our final question, which again is coming straight back to yourself, Andy. And this is a library specific question now for each of you. Andy, how do you make Angular faster?
Yeah, so I'd kind of work through from top to bottom. I'd make sure the Node version is an up-to-date Node version, the most up-to-date you can get. As Node gets more modern, newer, it gets faster. Same goes with Angular. If your Angular version's a bit out of date, see if you can update that. Again, as they get newer, they get faster. Next thing I would do is kind of lean on testing a bit more. If you're kind of finding the build times of Angular is slow, maybe you're kind of doing all your probing and building, and does this work in the app as a whole? So kind of use testing, unit tests to find out do things work. And then to make that faster, use Jest instead of Karma. It kind of goes outside the Angular way. So I've just kind of gone against everything I said about doing things the Angular way, but kind of Jest is way faster than Karma for unit testing. And then kind of one of the final things I would do is, two things. NX. So Greg mentioned NX. NX is awesome. It caches loads of stuff, makes everything faster. So do that. And the final one is use something like Storybook. So rather than, and I'm sure this will be familiar when I explain it, you're trying to change some styles on a modal. So you have to log in, and then you have to enter the data, and then you have to go to another bit, and then you open up the console and you change the styles, and then you copy them and you paste them in, and you go back to copy them more styles, and your page hop reloads. So something like Storybook allows you to isolate the modal that you're trying to change, so you don't have to load the whole lot and kind of work your way through the app to find the things you want to work on. You can work on something in isolation. So that's a really good way to not make Angular faster, but speed up your kind of development cycle. And it's got a side effect that's going to give you more loosely coupled components, because if you can isolate it, it means it's not tightly coupled to other things. So that would be the kind of the process I go through in order.
Lovely. Thank you very much. Had a little bit of overrun again there again, but it was such useful, practical advice. I thought I couldn't possibly interrupt that. So, Greg, I will provide you with the equal 2 minutes on your side if you wish to use it.
Okay.
And the alternative question going to yourself, Greg, how do you make React faster?
Okay. I mean, the question is faster than what? Faster than Angular? Don't need to do anything. It's already faster. But yeah, everything Andy said was valid. In dev side, rely on the tooling, try and make your feedback cycle faster. Storybook is good for that. Unit tests, of course, rely heavily on those, which is great for React. It's got Jest comes with it. I think Jest is part of React. I don't even know anymore. But it's very closely coupled to it. And yeah, as you said before, it's very good. In runtime, yeah, NX, Next.js, one of those production frameworks, Gatsby or something would do server-side rendering. Heavy caching optimization will improve your load times. The builds normally output bundle warnings that people almost always ignore. Look at those, make sure they're fast, and focus on making sure that your SPA doesn't reload. I see a random practical tip, but I see a lot of SPA applications accidentally reload the whole thing, and that can introduce white pages and loading times that needn't be there. So yeah, practical stuff like that.
Lovely. Thank you very much. So that actually brings to a close our quickfire Q&A round there. In the meantime, I believe the polls are now closed or about to close. You may have a few seconds left just to get your last vote in there. Just wait to see if the poll is going to close or if we'll just take a running tally. The poll is now closed. So that brings us to a final result with 28 votes. The winner is React with 61% of the vote, Mr. Greg West. Ooh.
Ooh, I did a little happy dance. Yay. Okay, cool.
A beautiful happy dance celebration. I'm sure everyone is going to be going home remembering that. Lovely. Andy, commiserations to yourself. It was a finely fought case. Some excellent, compelling points in there, and some excellent practical advice as well. So, Greg, to celebrate your victory, I believe we have a mystery prize that Lindsay was going to unveil.
Oh, goodness me. I think we will be sending Greg a very well-deserved £50 Amazon voucher, as well as some sort of edible surprise.
Oh, thanks very much.
Ooh. Very nice indeed. So if any of you wish to take part in a future debate for your own chance to win a £50 Amazon voucher and an edible surprise, or whatever the prize is next time, then please do contact Lindsay or Christina or the Headforwards team to put yourself forward. And again, if you have any suggestions for future debate topics, please do feel free to put those to us as well. We're very keen to hear what you would like to see our challengers take on in the future. And so that brings us to the end of our debate today. So I'd just like to say a very big thank you to our two intrepid debaters, Greg West and Andy Weir. Thank you both very much.
Thanks
A
for having
round
me.
of applause from myself.
Okay.
I'm sure everyone is applauding with their cameras off as well. And I'd also like to take the time to thank Lindsay and Christina and the Headforwards business team for making this happen today as well as everyone in the audience for taking the time to join us today, giving up some of your lunch to come and watch our debate. I hope you've enjoyed it as much as I have. So as I say, we hope to run more of these events in the future, so watch this space. But until then, thank you very much for joining us. Have an excellent day, and we will see you next time.